Hello guys, welcome to another session of AppSheet and more. I created a video some time back on how you can create records from an enumlist selection. I got a lot of feedback from you who enjoyed the video and wanted to know if it's possible to create rows from a record that has multiple enumlists. Well, you are in luck because in this video, I'm going to show you how you can create rows from a record that has multiple enumlist selections. So if you're excited, join me and let's do this in AppSheet. Alright guys, so let's get started. So the preamble for this particular case is that we have an application where staff have orders to place. So we are taking the staff as an enumlist and then their menu is also an enumlist. So they can select several items from the application. So I'm going to look at three particular relationships that can happen between two enumlists in a record, right? So the first one is a menu to all, where you have selected some stuff and each staff gets every item selected from the menu. Right, so if it's 3 items selected in the menu, each staff is going to get those 3 items. So let's see how that works. So that's the menu to all relationship over here. So I'm going to click the plus button here. I select some stuff. So let's say I select Emapel, let's say Grace and Ben. Right, I click done. And then I'm going to select the menu item. So Banku and Tilapia and Fufu and Light Soup. Right, I click this and I click save. So when you come here to orders, Mapel has Banku and Tilapia, Fufu and Light Soup, Grace, Banku and Tilapia, Fufu and Light Soup, Ben, Banku and Tilapia, Fufu and Light Soup. So that's the first kind of relationship. Okay, now let's look at the second one. The second one is a one-to-one relationship and I'm using a feedback kind of scenario. Let's say each of them have had their meals and they would like to provide feedback on their meals, right? So we come here, we click on the plus button, we select the staff, so Mapel, Grace, Ben, right? And then each of them have a section to provide their feedback. So here, said meal was great. Grace says too much salt. And Ben says loved it. Right? So when we save and we come to staff feedback, we should see Emapel's feedback, which is Emapel says meal was great. Grace says too much salt. Ben says loved it. So each of them have a record created for them. And the last one is a many-to-many relationship. Now in this case, each staff member can select their number of items they want from the menu. They don't have to have the same items from the menu. So let's look at how that also exists. So under orders, right, I'm going to click here, Emapel, Grace, and Ben, the 3 suspects. And then so Emapel's order is King K and Kelly Willie. Grace's order is going to be Tuosafi, to curry photo and yummy palava sauce, and Ben is just going to have one item, which is wachi. Okay, now by the way, these are all Ghanaian dishes if you are just wondering, and I'm going to save this. Okay, so when you come to staff orders, you see Imabo had her kilibili and her kinky. Grace had mutu, tuzafi, curry photo, yummy palava sauce, and Ben had his wachi. So now let's look at how we can do this in AppSheet. Let's go. Alright guys, so let's get going. So the first type of enum-to-enum relationship we're going to be looking at is the many-to-all relationship or many-for-all relationship. This is where many individuals or many items on an enum list relate to all the items that have been selected in another enum list. So for instance, if I select over here, we have Daniel, Emapel, and Grace, right? Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 meals. What this means is that each individual, each staff in this enum list is going to get all 4 meals selected. So Daniel is going to have a record for jollof, for wache, for banku and tilapia. Emapel is going to have a record for jollof, wache, banku and tilapia. Grace is going to have an order for jollof, wache, and banku and tilapia. So many for all, right? They each get everything on the other enum list. So let's see how we can create this. Okay, so first I'm going to walk you through the app I already have. So this is a menu app that has a list of meals. This is where you do your enum to enum creation. That's the orders table, and this is where the individual records are created, which is the staff table. Now let me just point out that the orders ID here in the staff table is a ref to the orders table. So that's why when you come to the orders table, you have a related transactions table. Okay, good. Now to do this, you're going to need a number of virtual columns. Okay, so these virtual columns are going to help us actually calculate and know which meal has been created, which meal is yet to be created, and which staff needs a new record. Okay, so we're going to click on the plus button. The first and the obvious one is going to be the total number of rows I want to create. So total rows. Great. And our total rows is basically going to be a product of the number of staff selected and the number of meals selected, right? So I'm going to say count staff, right? I'm going to multiply this by the count of the meals. Easy peasy, straightforward. Great. I'm going to save this. So this is just going to multiply. So if I select 3 individuals and then 4 meals, I have 12. If I select 2 individuals and 4 meals, I have 8. Great. Now the next one is going to be, let's actually count of the meals. So number of meals. So it's also going to be count meals. I could have just related that in that column, but then it's fine. I'm just going to click this. So I have the number of meals over here. Good. The next virtual column I'm going to create is the number of rows yet to be created, right? Yet to be created. So plus, I'm going to come here. I'm going to say yet to create. Good. Now yet to create rows are basically going to be total number of rows minus, right? Now, how do I know the number of rows have been created? Good question. That's by counting related transactions, order ID. Okay. So if I count the number of related transactions basically, and I subtract it from, I'm going to say this. Okay, so done. So that means once I've not started creating, yet to create and then total rows should be the same, right? It should be the same. Okay, good. All right, the last virtual column I'm going to create is actually one that I need to explain the function I'm using, right? So that you all understand what I'm trying to achieve here. Okay, so I'm going to come here to my spreadsheet. It's easier to do this in a spreadsheet. Okay, so the function I'm going to use is mode, right? Now, what mode basically does is you have a numerator. Let's say I have a numerator of 14 and I'm dividing it by, let's say 5, right? So what mode basically does, it tells you what is going to remain after you've taken 5 out of 14 a number of times. So if I say mode and I say 14 divided by 5, okay, so it's going to tell you that 14, when 5 goes into 14, as many times as it can, the remainder is going to be 4. It can't go into that remainder 4. So that's the remainder. So this is like a remainder after 5 goes into 14. In this case, it goes into 14 twice. You have 4 left basically. Yes, so any number you put over here, so let's say 13 is going to be 3. If I put 20 here, because 5 goes into 20 perfectly, you have 0, right? 21. If I put 21 over here, you have 1. So basically that's how it works. Now, the reason why we're using the mode is very good, or it's very helpful in creating a pattern, right? A pattern of allocating values, right? So over here, I'm going to put an example. Let's say we have 12 rows we're supposed to create. Okay, 12 rows we're supposed to create for, let's say, 4 people, right? So you know that for the first one, 12 divided by 4, you have 0, right? As this reduces, so this minus 1, you have 11 more when this equals to this. Sorry, no. So let me just copy this down. Okay, so this equals to this is 4. So now when I copy this formula down, I have 3. So I'm just going to keep copying this down till it gets to 0. It gets to 1. Yeah. Now observe something. Okay, I'll copy this down. Now you take note of something. Notice that I have 0 occurring every 4 iterations. So 0 here, I have 0 here, I have 0 here. Okay, so this ability of the mode function helps me to allocate or know that, okay, I have done 4 rows, I'm going on to the next one. I have done 4 rows, I'm moving on to the next one. I've done 4 rows, moving to the next. So if I have 4 individuals, right, I know that, okay, so the first person, Daniel, will pop up here. Okay, so I'll have Daniel, And when there's another 0, I'll have a new name. So let's say Grace. So I have Grace. Then the next person, I have a new name. So Pearl. You see how it works, right? Because I know that whenever there's a new 0, give me a new name. When there's a new 0, give me a new name, because I have done creating the 4 meals for each individual. So this is going to be our number of meals. And this is going to be yet to create rows. I hope this actually explains it. I don't know how else I'm going to actually explain it. So you have your yet to create rows. You are creating 4 meals for 3 individuals. That gives you 12, right? And then this is the 4 meals, and then this is the remainder, like when you use the mode function, which is this basically divided by that. So you're going to say every time there's a 0, you're going to give me a new, or move on to the next person in the list of individuals selected. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So we're first going to create our mode function, which is basically going to be our yet to create rows divided by our number of meals. So I'm going to come over here. Okay, I'm going to create a mode column. I'm going to call this mode, and I'm going to say mode. Okay, and I'm going to say yet to create, and then the divisor is our number of meals. I'm going to save this and click done. So that's our mode virtual column, and it's going to be very helpful in how to allocate the various meals to each individual. So let me save this. Great. So now that we have that in place, we can go ahead and create our loop actions. So I'm going to come here and create actions. So under the other table, I'm going to create a new action. Now, for my previous video, the first action you always create is action that actually does what you want to do. In this case, create new records, right? So I'm going to say create new rows for staff orders. Let me hide this. I keep forgetting to hide it. Okay, good. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to add a new row to another table using the values from this row. All right, into the transactions table. Okay, the order ID is going to remain as the order ID. I'm going to save that. Okay, and then the transaction ID, that's what's supposed to be unique. So I'm going to say order ID, and I'm going to concatenate this with hash, and I'm going to count so that I kind of have a reference to the order ID. So count related transactions, in this case order ID. Okay, and I'm going to say this +1, because the first one is going to be 0. Now the transaction ID can just be unique values, but I just wanted to relate to the order ID. So I know I have this order ID -1, this order ID -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, I'm going to save that. The next item on my list is going to be staff. Okay, so staff, now like remember I mentioned, okay, so for at every point the mode is 0, right, we want to use a new staff. Okay, so what are we going to do? So we're going to say index in the staff table. What I want you to do is, if the mode is equal to 0, move on to the next staff. If the mode is equal to 0, move on to the next staff. It sounds easy, but then how do you put it in a formula so the AppSheet understands? So we're going to say if mode is equal to 0, right? Basically, if mode is equal to 0, what I want you to do is go into the transaction table or the related transaction column, count the number of staff, and add 1 to that. That should work, right? Good. So I'm going to say, let's see, related transaction staff. This gives us all the related transaction staff. I'm going to do a count of the unique in this column, right? A count of the unique in this column, like this, and add 1 to it. Other than that, just give me the current number that's moving around. So I'm just going to take this, copy this, which is the count of the unique, and paste this. So basically what I'm saying is, take the staff list, right? Now, if the mode function, which I just explained to you, right? If the mode happens to be 0, what I want you to do is take the related transactions staff column. So the related transaction staff column means that for that particular ID, go and pick all the related staff columns or related staff values in the transaction table, and then count them. Count the unique, right? Because we have duplicates. So count the unique of that. Okay. Now if you count it, okay, and you have, let's say, 1, add 1 to that number, that's 2, and go and pick the second value in the index in the staff list. So basically that's what I'm trying to do over here. So I'm going to save this, and then the next one is mail. Okay, so mail. So for mail, that's a bit straightforward. So let's take a look at this one more time. So you know that over here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 0, repeating because this is 4. If this was 5, it would have been, let me copy this down. If this was 5, you have 2, 1, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 4. So it's actually supposed to be 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's how it actually works. So there's some sort of like a pattern to it. So what I'm going to say is that just take the mode, right? Add 1 to it and pick it from the list of meals. That should work. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to come and say index. I'm going to say meal, right? I'm going to say take a mode and then just add 1 to it. That should work. Let's see if I'm right. So I'm going to save this, and then let's see if there's anything we need to do. Yeah, we're done. Okay, so now we need to provide a condition that will make the loop stop, right? The loop can't loop forever, right? So you have to be careful. So we're going to basically say that as long as the number of rows created is less than the count of the related list, right? Keep creating, just keep continue working. So our condition is basically going to be total row. As long as this total row is greater than, right, a count of the related transactions underscore staff or order ID, basically any of them work, right? So as long as this is greater than this, the number of this is greater than the count of this, you are good, right? I'm going to save this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a duplicate of this. Now this one is going to be our loop. So loop over here, and for the loop, what you're doing is you're just grouping a sequence of actions. So group this, right, and then add the action. The action we want to add here is create new rules for start. That's the second one. Okay, now the third item is to duplicate this, and then this is going to be our repeat action. Okay, so for repeat action, we're going to execute an action on a set of rules. So you're going to select this. The reference table is always the initial table, the same as the table, the record table, right? So we select that, and we're going to say list, okay, of this row. The reason why we are doing list of this row is this row. Okay, actually we are only interested in this row, but you notice that this action only works on a list. We're trying to pull a fast one on AppSheet by doing list. Okay, and then we are going to reference our loop like that. Okay, and then in your loop, you're going to bring this particular action, the repeat. So that creates that never ending cycle until the condition we place over the ends. So I'm going to save this. And that should be it. If we've done this right, that should be it. So when you come to the orders table, you click on this plus button, right? We want to add our condition to this form. So over here under view, you click on the link here, okay? And then you come below here under behavior, you're going to link this to the loop over there, and then you're going to save. All right. Now there are some columns you don't want to show. You don't want to show the total row, number of meals you have to create, and then MOP. So I'm going to come here. I'm just going to say don't show 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I just want the staff and the meals. All right, let's save this. and then let's try it out. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to select staff. I'm going to select Grace, D, Ben, Fedi. Click done. And the meal, I'm going to select Red, Kili Willy, King Fish, Tuzafi. Click done. Right, and I'm going to save. Okay, now let's see if this worked. So staff ID. So we have these. Okay, so we have a problem here. We have several Graces. Let me look into the spreadsheet. Let's see if this actually is the case. So transaction. So we have Grace D. Do you actually know what's happening over here? So this is a classic example of some of the issues I had when I was a new AppSheet user. You create something and then you notice that at the end of the day, you just have one record. All the records are gone. Why? Because in the transaction table, our key isn't unique, right? So it's using the order ID, so it keeps replacing. So what you need to do is set or make sure your key is unique. Okay, let's save this. All right, so in the orders, I'm going to click plus button, staff. I'm going to select D, Ben, Fedi, Na, Prissy. Click done. And I'm going to select a meal for all of them. So Wachi and Red. So each of them, how many are they? 5 number. Each of them are getting Wachi and Red. So I'm expecting 10 rows. I'm going to save this. Okay, so in the orders table, let's see how this go. So stuff. Okay, so we have for Grace, we have for D, we have for Ben, Fedi. No. Okay, it's working. Pretty. Am I missing something? I think Grace should have one more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, it seems this was from the previous record. Oh, okay. This was from the previous record. For a moment, I was not quite sure. So I had D, Ben, Fedi, Na, Prissy. Yes, so it works, right? Let me just validate this. Let me just take everything out. I didn't do that. So let's try this one more time. I'm just going to do for 2 people, Fedi and Na, right? And then I'm going to select 3 meals for each of them. So just 2 people, 3 meals. Let's just do this one more time. Let's be sure this works. So 1, 2, 3. Fedi, good. Then Na, 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. All right, so actually we are good. This works. All right, guys. So that is how you create rows from more than one or multiple Enumlist selections, as long as the relationship is a one-to-all relationship. In the next session of this video, I'm going to show you how you can create rows from a one-to-one relationship between 2 Enumlists, right? So let's see that. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to change things a bit. We'll come back to our menu database, but then I'm going to change things a bit where this time around individuals are giving feedback. Okay, so you select their names and then you're able to provide feedback for each individual. So let's see how that can be done. Okay, so first let's understand what we have as our table. So we have staff, we have feedback, and we have feedback records. Basically, feedback is where we provide each individual's feedback, and the records is where it's broken down into new rows. Okay, so over here we have our staff as an Enumlist. We have feedback as a column. In feedback records, we have a feedback ID, which is a ref, and then we have record ID. So basically, it's broken down into records. Okay, now the trick here is, in order to be able to provide feedback for each individual, right, we must have placeholder columns that will be available for each individual that is selected. Okay, so when we come to staff, in the feedback table, what we're going to do is we have one feedback, right? But I'm going to change this and put an underscore here and call this feedback 1. Okay, I'm going to drag this to the right and have about 5 feedback placeholders. You can have as many as you want, but then yeah, you need to have a good number of feedbacks. All right, now, so what we're going to do is we're going to come here to our application, okay, and then we're going to regenerate our table. Great. Okay, so now we have feedback 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, remember, like I said, you can have several placeholder columns for as many feedback columns as you want, but I advise that you do not have too many. All right, so the number of things you're going to do. One, we're going to indicate when this feedback column should show to take feedback. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to try and improve the display name. Right now it shows as feedback 1, but we're going to display the individual selected and feedback. So if we select 3 people, I expect to see 1, 2, 3 feedback, right? And it should come with their name. So this one should be maybe Daniel's feedback. This one should be Noel's feedback. This one should be Evan's feedback, right? Something like that. So I'm going to click here. For show, I'm basically going to say count, okay, staff, right? Count staff. Now, if the count of staff is greater than or equal to 1, right, then this column should show. So I'm going to copy this. Let me just copy without the number so I don't have to delete the number all the time. So copy this and save. Okay, and now for display name over here, okay, it's basically going to be a concatenation of the first individual selected and their and the word feedback basically. So index. So we're going to say index of staff, right? 1, and then I'm going to concatenate this. What's the concatenate sign here? With feedback. Okay, so the staff ID, I'm going to bring this so it makes it sound appropriate. So Daniel's feedback. Great. I'm going to copy this as well to make my life easy. I'm going to click save, click done. Okay, so that's for the first person, right? Now the next thing is I just go to the next one. So feedback 2, click in here. I have a clipboard that I can use. So I'm just going to paste that over here. So for Windows, you can activate this with Windows V. For Mac, you need to buy a third-party application. Okay, so this is 2. And then I come to display name. Okay, Control-Shift-C. So I'm going to change this basically to 2. Okay, and I'm basically going to do this for all of them. Do the third one. So quickly, click here, Control-Shift-C. Count of this should be 3. I'm going to save this. Come to display name, Control-Shift-C. Index here. I'm going to change this to 3. I'm going to save this. And this is why you cannot do a lot, right? Because you have a lot to do. But then once you do that, I guess you just know how to do it multiple times. You just do it once and you are done. All right, so display name. No. Index of this is going to be 4. I'm going to save this here. Click done. And the last one, Control-Shift-C. Count of this should be 5. Greater than or equal to 5, right? And the display name, so Control-Shift-C. Index of this would be what? Yeah, 5. Great. Save this, click done, and save. All right, so what we've basically done is that we've restricted when these columns can pop up, right? When they can show up based on the number of staff that have been selected. Right, so let's test this out. I'm going to create a new view. Okay. Call this feedback. Make this a table, come from the feedback table. Okay, so you click a plus. Okay, so you select the staff. So Emily, Luna, Penelope. Click done. So we have Emily's feedback. Happy with the meal. Too much salt. If you know, delivery time too long, right? So each individual can provide their feedback. Click save. Okay, and the feedback, you're able to provide a feedback for each individual. So this is Emily's feedback, this is Luna's feedback, and this is Penelope's feedback. So let's say now we want to create rows from this feedback. How do we do this? Okay, so very simple. We come here to create our action buttons. We're going to come to feedback. click on the plus, create new actions. Now remember, it's a 3-step process. The first thing is to create the action button that actually does what you want to do, which is create new rules. So create feedback rules. Right, good. So from the feedback table, we want to add new rules to another table, which is what? The feedback records. Fantastic. Now that we've done that, the next thing we want to do is to specify what each column in the feedback records would get. So in the feedback records, the feedback ID is going to remain the same as ID. Okay, so in the feedback table, it's called ID. I'm going to say. Now the next one is record ID. Now record ID is going to be ID, like we did for the other application. We're going to concatenate this, right, with the count. Okay, so we're going to count basically how many of this have been done. So we're going to say count related feedback records dot ID, and then add 1 to it. Okay, now we need to put this in parentheses, right? So they have to be in their own parentheses. Okay, so record feedback, so related feedback record ID. No, I didn't say stuff. Let me see. ID. Oh, it's called feedback ID. Okay, makes sense. So feedback ID. All right, so related feedback records, feedback ID plus 1. Fantastic. So we're going to save this. Okay. And then for stuff, right, we're going to do index. Okay. So now we need to move on to the next one and the next and the next. So basically we're going to say staff should be staff selected and then count. Okay. Related feedback IDs and then feedback ID. So count of this plus 1. Okay. And then, so we need to close this one more time here. Okay, good. So index staff count related feedback records, feedback ID plus 1. This closes because this, do we necessarily need this? I don't think so. No. So I'm going to take this off, right? And then this closes here. Okay, good. I'm going to click save. Now the last one, right, which is feedback. Okay. Now you realize that we have feedback in different columns. Okay. So it's going to be pretty hard to write a formula that's going to jump from one column to another based on the number of records that have been created so far. So what we're going to do is going to create a virtual column this time. Okay, so I'm going to come to feedback and I'm going to create a virtual column, all feedback. Right now, what this is basically going to be is a list, okay, of all the feedback. So I'm going to say feedback 1, feedback 2, feedback 3, feedback 4, and then feedback 5. You just combine all your feedbacks together to create one list of feedbacks. And from there, you can just extract them. So let's look at how this looks like. So I have happy with the meal, too much salt and delivery time. And then, the space for 4 and 5, right? And that's good with this. I'm just going to save this. Click done. I'm going to come back to my actions. Where are you? Feedback, create feedback rules. So here, I'm just going to say index all feedback. And I'm going to paste, no, I wanted to paste, but let me just do this. So count, right? So we're just counting related feedback records, feedback ID. Okay. And then we're just going to add 1 to that. So it's going to pick the first one, second one, and so on and so forth, and save. Okay. Now the next thing we need to do is to bring in a condition that tells AppSheet when to stop creating new records. Okay, so under behavior, under condition, I'm going to say that as long as the number of staff selected, right, is greater than number of rows, sorry, is greater than the number of rows created, keep creating more rows. Okay, so I'm going to count staff. I'm going to say number of staff. So as long as this is greater than count, a very popular formula, count this, and then say feedback ID. Okay, so as long as this is greater than this, keep creating them, don't stop. So I'm going to click save. Okay, and I'm going to hide this, and then the next thing I'm going to do is duplicate this. So duplicate this, and this time around this is going to be for loops, or the loop. Okay, now what we're going to do here in this particular action, all we want to do is group some actions. So I'm going to click group, and I'm selecting the row maker action. Okay, that's the second one. And the third one, so I'll duplicate this. Okay, and this is my repeat action. Okay, and here I'm going to execute an action on a set of rows. Okay, now the table is always going to be the initial table you're using, which is the feedback table. Okay, now which row do you want to action on? Okay, I want action on this row, right? So this row. Okay, so now even though this is correct, this is a valid answer, right? But the type is text. What we want is a list, right? It works with lists. So we're just going to try and trick AppSheet and just say, okay, this is a list. And AppSheet says, okay, yeah, true, list. Let me see. Good. Now reference action. Okay, now what do you want to reference here? I want to reference the loop. Okay, in my repeat. And I go back to the repeat. No, I go back to the loop, and then I add the repeat. So that brings in that cycle. Okay, and I save. Okay, so now we're almost done. The last thing we want to do is to trigger these actions. So once the feedback form is saved, this action should kick in. Okay, so I'm going to come to feedback, click on the form button, and then over here for view, my image is blocking this, but there's a link here. You just click this, right? And then we're going to scroll down to behavior, and you see form saved. So when the form is saved, I want you to carry out the loop. Okay, I'm going to click save. All right, so let's test this out. So we're going to select Emily, we're going to select Theodore, we're going to select Penelope, click done, and then this feedback, I'm just going to put numbers away. So 2, 4, and 6. And then I'm going to click save. Okay, so now let's come here. So we have this is our stuff, right? 2, 4, 5, and then feedback here. So we have a record for Emily, Theodore, and Penelope. Yeah, so that's it. So our app is working, and it's creating a row for feedback for each individual that we provided in our Enumlist. Okay, so that's the second application. Now we're going to move on to our third application. Okay, so we're looking at our third and final option, where we have many to many. So you have many staff, and then they each have many orders they selected, right? So we want to see, we're going to create a record for each staff for each meal they have selected. And yes, we're back to our mail application. Okay, so this is the same table as previously done. We have menu, we have orders, we have staff, and then we have the transaction. Okay, now what we're going to do is to quickly make sure our relationships are in place. So orders over here, this is the key. Then transactions, this is the key. No, this should be the key, and this should be a ref to the orders table. Okay, click done. Great. All right, so now let's just take a look at what we want to try and achieve. So when you click here in orders, okay, we want to be able to select some stuff like this, right? And then we should have the option to provide each individual's meal. So like we did in the previous application where we provided feedback for each individual, this time around, we provide a meal for each individual. So what that means is we need to create placeholder columns for this as well. So when you click view data source, all right, so over here, I'm going to come to orders. No, first provide the number, and then I'm going to drag this. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's enough. You can create more if you need that. I'll come here to orders and regenerate my table structure. Okay, so now we have this in place, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did previously to control two things: when it pops up and what the name is going to be when it pops up. So I'm going to click count stuff. I believe I already have this saved, so I'm just going to put one here. Okay, and then display name, right? It's going to be index staff, comma 1, and then this time around I'm concatenating this with order. Now just make sure you delete the next apostrophe that pops up when you bring the first one over here, or you can have issues. Okay, so I'm going to just skip on to the very last one, so you don't need to watch me do this all over again. So I have all that in place. So now let's test that out. So I'm going to click here, stuff, Daniel Imapel. Okay, click done. And then you have these over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these Enumlist as well. Right, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to make them so Enumlist. Right, and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to say this is coming from the meal menu. Meal or dish name menu, dish name. So I'm going to copy this, save, click done. Okay, next person, Enumlist, and I'm going to put this here. I'm also going to speed this up so you don't need to see all of them. Okay, so I'm done with that as well. So I'm going to click on this plus, right? Staff, select these two, done. You can select a mail here, and then you can select a mail over here. All right, great. Now what we want to do, okay, is to make sure that at all times only 5 names can be selected. So let's say we have D, okay, we have Chrissy, we have, let's say, Ben, right? So in this case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that makes sense. So I'm going to add others for these individuals as well. Choose a fee, save this. Okay, good. So now I have enough names over here. Now we want to make sure at all times only 5 names can be selected because we only have 5 placeholders, right? So we're going to set a data validation over here under staff. So we come to data validation. We're going to say count of staff. This column should be less than or equal to 5. Right, and the error is going to say you can only select a maximum of 5 names. Okay, and I'm going to click save, done. So what happens here is if I come here and I select all names, which is more than 5, click done, you can only select a maximum of 5 names. Yeah, that will make sure that I only have 5 orders at all time. You can do 10, you can do 20, but then I just want to restrict this to just 5. Okay, now we have that done. Let's save this. Now there are a number of things we need to do. The first thing we need to do is to combine all the meals that have been selected. In this case, I'm going to create a new virtual column called all meals, and it's going to be a list, okay, of meal number 1, meal number 2, meal number 3, just like we did in the previous application, meal number 4, and then meal number 5. Is that okay? I'm going to click save, click done, and save. Good. Right, so this should not pop up. I'm going to hide this as well. So that's going to give us a list of all our meals. When we are selecting each individual's meal, we have that in place. Okay, now that we are done with the list of all the meals, we're going to now find out how many rows you're supposed to create and how many rows we are yet to create. Okay, so I'm going to click on this plus button, right? So total number of rows, which is simply going to be the count of all the meals. So I'm going to say count, and I'm going to say all meals, right? It's basically going to count all the meals, which has every meal for each individual listed over there. So I'm going to click save, I'm going to click done. Now, number of rows yet to be created, okay, and that's simply going to be, so yet to create, okay, so this is simply going to be total rows, which is a count, minus the count of related transactions order ID. Then I save this, click done. So in this case, we know the number of rows you're supposed to create, and we know the number of rows we are yet to create, right? This is good enough for us to now go ahead and try and create our action items. So we come here to action, okay, under orders, I'm going to click a plus button, create a new action. Okay, I'm going to say create new rules. Okay, and then I'm going to say add a new row to another table. What's my table? The transactions table. Okay, so order ID, we know is going to be order ID. That's quite straightforward. Next one is transaction ID. For transaction ID, we know it's going to be the order ID, and then we are trying to concatenate this with the number of rows that have been created so far, right? So we're going to say count related ID transactions, and then we're going to take the order ID. Okay, now we need to add 1 to this because the first one will be 0. So this way, and I'm going to click save. So the next on the bill is staff. But I'm going to skip staff and come to menu because that's much more simple, right? And then I'll come back to staff. So index, I'll say all meals, and then I'm just going to do a count of related transactions, and I'm going to say order ID, right? And then I'm just going to add 1, just like I did for the indexing. So this will pick the very first one, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have this in place. I'm going to click save. Okay, so the last one we have to create is staff. Now, staff is a bit tricky, right? Because we need to know when to move on to the next staff. The problem in this case is we don't know how many meals can be selected for a staff. We want to make it as unlimited as possible, right? So we can't necessarily just use mode like we did in the previous one. What we need to do is actually find out when each staff ends, right? Okay, how many meals each staff has selected, so which row number each staff is going to basically end. So we're going to come here, we're going to create a very interesting formula. So in the orders table, I'm going to create 2 things. So I'm going to say last row per staff. Okay, and I'm basically going to create a list that kind of combines the count of each staff's meal. So list, okay, this is going to be a count, okay, of meal number 1, right? Hope you're watching this. And I'm going to do a count of meal number 1 again, plus this time count of meal number 2. Okay, I'm going to take these 2, bring them here, and then I'm going to add count of meal number 3, and I'm going to take these 3 here, bring them back here, and I'm going to add this to count of meal number 4. At this point, you get the drift, right? So we're going to copy this, and I'm going to add this to a count of meal number 5. And you keep doing this till you get to as many placeholders as you have created. Okay, so let's test this and see what it looks like. So I have 3336, which is odd because there are no males over here. And then why is there 6? Did I add all males? Let me check and see. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Oh, you know what? Let's just save this and see what happens. Count all males. Okay, something is broken. Stuff doesn't have a value. That's fine. Let me just delete this. Let's refresh this. Okay. I just want to test to make sure our count is indeed working. So we have 3336. I'm not quite sure why we have 6 over here. 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay, so let's take a close look at this. So this is count of this, count of that. So I'm going to bring this down. Count of this. And then count of this plus this plus that. That's number 3. And then this is number... Oh, I see. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, comma, not plus. Like this. So we have count of 1, count of 2, count of 3, count of 4, count of 5. Okay, so that's why we had the error. I'm going to save this. So it shows you how many each staff had. In this case, we had just one order, right? So we have 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Now you're going to understand why this is important. Okay, so the next thing we're going to create is a virtual column that tells us which staff we currently are at. Okay, so we're going to click plus. It says current staff name. Okay, so the current staff name is also going to be an interesting formula that says that if, right? And then we're going to say if count of related transactions. At this point, to make this formula very simple, I'm going to create a virtual column for count related transaction feedback, else it's going to be too long. So let me do this, and let's say count rows. Let me just say count rows, or let me just make a count to make it very short. Count related transaction feedback. Why do I keep writing feedback? What ID? Yeah. And save. Done. Okay. Now let's see. Our next virtual column is current staff name. So this is just going to put the current staff name that we are creating a record for. So we're going to say if count, right, is less than index of what? Last row of staff 1. So if this count happens to be less than the first value of the last row of staff, okay, what do I want as my value? What I want is index staff, comma 1. Okay, let's make this ifs, which is the plural. Okay, so we have this. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to bring a comma. I'm just going to copy this formula and duplicate. Paste this here. I'm going to say if this is 2, give me 2, comma. If this is 3, give me 3. If this is 4, give me 4. And the last one, if this is 5, give me 5. Right, you can do this as many as you want, but that's all I need. I'm going to click save. Okay, so this guy is going to just pull in the current staff name as the records are being created. So I'm just going to come here to actions. I'm going to say let staff be equal to current staff name. I have two. Interesting. Let me just take the text. Click save and save. Okay. Now the next thing is to provide our behavior. This will make sure that the loop doesn't run forever, right? So I'm going to say total rows is greater than the count. I actually have a column that counts, so I can just use that. So count of this. So as long as total rows happens to be greater than the count of rows that have been created, we are good. Save. Okay. So once everything is in place, I'm just going to hide this. Come here. I'm going to click on duplicate. Okay. Now this is going to be my loop. So for the loop, we're just executing a sequence of actions. Okay. And this action is going to be create new rows. And we duplicate this again. And this time we have our what? Our repeat. Okay. Now for repeat, what we're doing is we're executing an action on a set of rows. Our table is the same table. And then this time, like we always do, we say this, this row, like that. And then we save, right? And then our reference is going to be our loop. Okay, and in our loop, we'll add our repeats. And then we save. The last thing we want to do is click on this, come to the orders table, click on the plus button. Okay, now click on the link to take us to this view. And then we're going to run our loop once the form is saved. So I'm going to click save. Okay, so there are a few columns I need to hide. I'm going to come here. Done. Orders. So let's hide all these columns. So hide. Okay, so now let's try this out. So I'm going to select Samuels, Imapel, Grace, and Daniel, and D. Right, so Imapel orders Wache, Grace orders Kelewede and Kinky. She loves Kinky. D, Tozafi, and Carifoto. Let me add one more to these. So we have 3. So 1 for Imapel, 2 for Grace, and 3 for D. I'm going to click save. Now let's see how this works. So this is our order. Let's see our transactions. So that's for Imapel, that's for Grace, and we expect 3 more for D. So 1, 2, last one, 3. Ta-da! So this way you can have 2 enum lists, many-to-many relationship. You can select a number of people and select as many mails as you want, right? That's how you simply get this done. Now, the only limitation you see over here is because you cannot select a limited number of staff. You need inputs, or you need columns or placeholders that can hold the values for each staff. I hope you enjoyed this video like I did, and I hope to see you in the next session.